Good afternoon and welcome. You're listening live to Heart-to-Heart at KMET 1490 AM, ABC Radio Live. This is a program that aims to help you understand and to become your loving self. I'm Dr. Mitra Rashidian. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist and a certified sexologist in full-time private practice in beautiful Encino, California. And I'm offering this program to you along with my colleague, best friend, and business partner of many years, Dr. Robert Jaffe.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
So I welcome everybody here today, and we've been talking for quite a while about addictions. We've said that codependency is probably one of the greatest addictions that we have. I would say that maybe along with eating. Eating food can be a very powerful addiction. But today we're going to be talking about more about codependency, not just in terms of what codependency is, but also how do we tell if we are codependent. And then once we determine that we are, which most of us in society have some codependency going on, but how do we actually discover whether that is us? And then, of course, what can we do about it once we do discover it?
Yeah.
So another word for the codependent self is the false self. And the false self is the self that we develop early in life in order to fit in with the family that we were raised in. In a very healthy family, we don't have to really present we don't have to make up and present a false self to our parents, because our parents are asking the question, who have we here? When we come into this world, and we come in, let's say, with a mom and dad, they can ask that question, who have we here? And when they stay focused on discovering who have we here, they give the room and the encouragement to the child to be whomever they are.
Right.
And when they are able to be whomever they are, which means that they can state whatever they see, they can comment on whatever is going on inside of them, whatever they're thinking, they can talk about their emotions, their feelings, and we give them the vocabulary to do that. When that happens, the person doesn't have to develop someone else into someone else in order to be loved and accepted by the parents that they are given. So when we don't have that, or we don't have enough of that, we're not talking about this in terms of black and white. There's no parent that is going to be perfect. There's no person that's going to be perfect, and therefore the parent isn't going to be always able to act in the way that's the most beneficial to the child. But if the parent does a good enough job, we have that expression in psychology. We call it the good enough parent. I say the good enough person. That means that we are mostly our authentic true selves. And sometimes we get a little lost, and sometimes we make up things in order to feel like we have to in order to get along, and to go along to get along, that kind of thing. But so what actually differentiates the false self from the true self is the ability to recognize when you're fearful and not give in to the fear.
Well, yeah, I just want to add something here. Based on my experience, when I talk about false self versus true self and parental involvement, I see a significant rush of guilt and shame.
Mm-hmm.
that, present itself within the conversation and the attitude and the behavior of the clients. It is as though when we say that the false self is developed as a result of form of interaction with parents or caregiver, it is as though we are saying that their parents were bad or horrible people.
Right.
So I'm glad that you mentioned, the good enough parent and, any other parent. Realistically, as a person that, we become parent, I wish there was a, parenthood course that we could take at high school, or something similar to that, to provide some effective educational program to teach us how to be a parent. Because just getting pregnant and getting birth to a child doesn't just, yes, that's a parent, but it's mostly parenthood that forms, a child's life.
Yes.
Not just the title of parent.
Right.
And that comes by education, that comes by variety of factors. And the best of the parents still leave some traces behind that they could have done better.
Of course.
Right.
Right.
So I just want to say that when we talk about parenthood and how parenthood has impacted the life of a person, if they are, functioning as their false selves, we're not saying that parents were bad. We're saying parents did what they could do at the time that they were raising the child.
Yes, and most children feel a loyalty
exactly
to their parents, and don't want to think badly of their parents.
Yes.
And of course, if loyalty is your highest value, then you are not going to question things that your parents said and did and how they impacted you, because you're going to feel disloyal, and that disloyalty will dissuade you from being curious and investigating the things that your parents did that helped you and the things that your parents did that didn't help you.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes.
Or
right.
that hurt you.
Right. So the sense of loyalty actually can be a roadblock to see the reality.
Yes, when loyalty is put above truth.
Right.
Yeah. So what I say to people who come into therapy is that your love of truth must supersede your feelings of loyalty.
Right.
And that is not to say that if you say something negative about your parents, that you aren't going to start feeling badly or guilty about it, but that we can then talk about that guilt and hopefully get you through that place, so that you can actually take a look at what actually you learned that is helpful, and what you learned that you're still holding on to that is hurting you.
Right.
And there are messages that our parents give us, often with the best of intentions, that because they're just giving us what they've learned, and oftentimes they have been with their parents who didn't understand or tell them always the correct way to look at things or the correct things to believe in, and they're carrying it forward because they've never questioned it either. And we call this an intergenerational transfer of belief systems.
Exactly. Yes. So the falsehood can actually be, a generational transformation process.
Yes, yeah. I mean, once one person changes, then everyone that they touch in their life changes,
Exactly.
because they're giving them a different philosophy, a different viewpoint, and a different energy.
Yes.
Yeah. So questioning the way that our parents raised us is something that not only helps us as individuals, but also helps us as role models for the people in our lives, especially our children, because we have the most profound influence over our children. And so, and I've said this on the air before, and you and I have joked about it. It brings up the roast story, right? Where
Right.
where the mother the husband and wife. They're newlyweds, and they go to the mother and father's house, and the mother has the roast, and she cuts off both ends of the roast and puts it in a pan and cooks it. And the husband says to the mother, I saw you cut off both ends of the roast. Why did you do that? And she says, I don't know, but my mother used to do that.
Yeah, the guy says it to his wife, to the newlywed, yes.
Yes. And so, yeah, the wife is doing it. And then the mother does the same thing. She's cutting off both ends of the roast, and they asks her, and she says, my mother used to do it. And then they're at the grandmother's, and then he says to the grandmother, well, both your daughter, my mother-in-law, and your granddaughter, my wife, they cut off both ends of the roast. Why did they do that? And the grandmother thinks about it, and she goes, why do they do that? She says, I don't know why they do it. She says, the reason I do it is because my pan is too small. and my pan is too small is a metaphor for many of the things that we learned as children, where we didn't understand why people were doing what they were doing, but we just saw them doing, and so we copied it. Or we didn't like what they did, and so we did the opposite.
Yes.
Yeah.
We used the small pan, but we put a bigger roast in it.
Exactly. My pan is too small.
Yes.
So this happens so often, and so it's important for us to recognize that to question our parents is not sacrilegious, and it isn't disloyal. If our parents are good parents, they really want us to continue to grow and to learn and to be our best selves. And that includes taking an honest look at the things that they did right and they did wrong. You may or may not wish to share that with your parents if your parents are still alive, and you may keep it to yourself, but you will still grow from the knowledge by recognizing things that your parents did that you've been copying, or going the opposite direction and rebelling against, neither of which is really you. It may be a very simple in between place that is you.
Exactly. I'm glad we said that, because that's a very important part of allowing ourselves to understand what makes us follow life, and as our false self versus as who we really are.
Mm-hmm.
Is the sense of loyalty over looking at the truth.
Right. We have to have a burning desire for truth, right, in order to grow. So going back to how do I know whether I'm codependent or whether I'm in my authentic true self, and I started off with the what I consider to be the real only 4-letter F word.
Okay.
Which is fear. Fear. So when we do things and we know that we're shading it, or we know that we're manipulating, the reason that we're doing it is usually out of some sort of fear. If I really tell her how I think, she's going to blow up. My fear is she's going to blow up. Well, then what? Well, then she won't like me, or then she won't love me. If I really state what I want, people will make fun of me because they'll tell me I'm being unrealistic. So what's my fear? My fear is people are going to make fun of me, and I will feel embarrassed, or I will feel ashamed. So how often do we do this versus how often do we actually speak what we know, what we believe to be our honest truth?
Well, that's a very important topic, which I think, is important to start with right after our commercial break.
We will take our commercial break, and we will see you in a few seconds.
In a short few seconds.
Bye-bye.
Beginning at 3:00 p.m. Join us. Good afternoon and welcome back. This is Heart to Heart program at KMET 1490 AM, ABC News Radio. Dr. Mitra and Dr. Robert here, offering you this segment on codependency, addictions, trauma, and relationships. And our topic today is true self versus false self and its development with Dr. Robert Jaffe. Please call us. We'd like to hear from you. 951-922-3532. Dr. Jaffe, we were talking on this amazing topic.
The amazing topic of the false self and the true self, and where we left off was that how do you differentiate when you are living in your false self versus living in your true self?
Right.
And I said that it brings up the only real four-letter word, which is fear, F-E-A-R. And that means that when people are operating from a fearful place, their true self goes into hiding. Our true self is kind. Our true self is generous. Our true self is appreciative. Our true self is grateful. And our true self, most of all, is loving. All of those characteristics of the true self, which is really our spirit, all of those characteristics combine to a place where when we are being kind, when we are being authentic, when we are being loving, we are making ourselves vulnerable. Because when we put out niceness and we get back meanness, we get hurt a lot. So what we want is we want people to be kind and loving back to us. And if we have fear that people aren't going to be kind and loving back, we modify how much kindness and lovingness we put out to them. When we modify that, that means that we are operating more from fear than from kindness or love. The fear is, if I'm sweet and loving and kind to you, and I get back a sour look or negative words or criticism, I will feel devastated and think I'm so stupid for being so vulnerable with you. And so I will prove that I'm not stupid and I won't be vulnerable anymore, and I won't put out, I'll only put out things that I know are okay. I'm not going to rock the boat, because then I could have the boat smashed in my face. When we are operating from that energy, that fearful energy, that is codependence. Because now we're more interested in how we're going to be received than in telling the other person our truth. And how many people do that? Well, almost everybody does that, at least occasionally.
Right.
Some people do that more than occasionally. Some people do that frequently. And some people have almost zero access to their authentic true self, and they live inside their codependent self. And these can be very, very bright people. We're not talking about people who are intellectually challenged here. Their brightness is often utilized to manipulate others and to go after power and money and possessions. And so they seek places, oftentimes in powerful positions in industry and in government, often even in religion. They seek to have power over other people because that serves their inauthentic false selves, or their codependent self. The codependent self is ego-based, and our ego is concerned with survival. So in order for us to survive according to our ego, we need to be in the good graces of others, and we need to manipulate others so that they can see things our way, so that we can win. The spirit is not concerned with physical survival because the spirit is non-physical. So the spirit then doesn't really care about how other people think. The spirit still wants to be treated lovingly, but if it isn't, the spirit doesn't take it personally. They say it as the other person's problem. So letting go of the false self means checking in with yourself to see whether or not you are being honest with yourself and with others, or whether you are operating from fear and trying to gain the favor of others with false information or with false flattery, and continuously telling falsehoods and lies in order to get what we think we need. So the first step is in the transformation from codependent or false selves into our authentic true selves is the recognition that we have a true self. People who have been living in their false selves for 1 or 10 or 50 years are often unaware that they have a true self, and so they just continue to do what they know how to do in order to get what they think they need, whether it's based on truth or lies. It doesn't matter to them. What matters to them is winning at all costs.
I have had, clients that they have asked me if they have a side that is so loving, you know, and so how come, uh, I mean, they can't, you're right, they can't even separate it from each other, that they have a loving side,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
They think that they have a injured side. They
Mm-hmm.
have, a side that has suffered and has survived.
Right.
Right. They operate from that perspective.
Right.
To bring to their attention that there is a side in them that is actually loving, it just said if that's the case, then how come that was missed to begin with by parents?
Right. Right. And so
Right.
when you ask that question, we come back to the intergenerational transfer of values, ideas, and beliefs.
Yes.
So if your parents didn't get what they needed in terms of nourishing their soul, the kindness, the love, the compassion, the appreciation, if they didn't get what they needed, then they didn't know to nurture that and to bring that down to their children.
Exactly. And I think there's also an additional process here is that, let's say, for example, myself, right, that I'm in this family that through this intergenerational transfer, that kind part is not really considered as important, right? So for me, as a receiver of these messages, I guess, we as children also kind of comply to that in order to fit in. And then that's another way that we ourselves dismiss our own true part.
That's what we talked about at the beginning,
right.
which is the false self is the part that had to fit in.
That had to fit
that
in.
had
yes.
to fit into
right.
the family.
Right.
Right. And so you cannot survive in a family where you don't fit in.
Right.
Because you become what we call in psychology the garbage can child. Means that everything that goes wrong gets put on you.
Scapegoat.
You're the scapegoat or the
yes.
garbage can child. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, okay. Exactly. So to change from the codependent self to the authentic true self is a change from victim consciousness to creator consciousness. When we are in victim consciousness, which is where we all start as children, because we are all victims as children of how our parents view us and treat us. We don't have the ability to say to our parents, go screw yourself, I'm going to go find another family. We're stuck in that family, which means that we either comply enough so that we don't get killed in the family, literally or figuratively. Our spirit gets crushed, or we keep fighting and then we get crushed, or we comply totally and we become the darling, but we lose ourselves in the process.
Right.
So that's what happens. So the shift from victim consciousness, which is us as children, to creator consciousness means that we have to see that everything that has happened in our life we co-created based on our view of it. So if our parents were mean to us, uh, how we thought about that uh, created inside of us a belief about ourselves. Now, some people, depending upon the individual, when the parent is mean to them, they recognize that the parent is being mean and they say to themselves, this parent has got a problem. They It's hard to say that when you're very tiny, but as you get older, you can begin to see that and say that. Some people say, my parent is being mean to me, I must have done something. And so then it becomes self attack. And depending upon what the parent is doing and how the parent views what they are doing, because some parents are mean and then they recognize it and then they try to make up for it or apologize. Some parents are mean and they don't recognize it and they put it back on the child and say, you caused me to yell or scream or hit. Depending upon how the parent responds to it, will determine whether the child is able to be vulnerable enough to show their loving, kind feelings, or whether the child will withdraw into themselves or develop a mean persona where they keep all the people away from them by showing people how dangerous they are.
Right. Right.
The first step in transforming from our codependent self into our true self is the recognition that we have a codependent self and that we're operating from fear. And to recognize when we're doing that and to say, aha, I caught it. I caught it. Now I see it. Seeing is the main ingredient in change. We cannot change something which we are not seeing or we're pretending doesn't exist or we're in denial of.
And that's the key point, denial of, where we are, how we view ourselves, and actually admitting to the fact that fear has been running our lives.
Exactly.
So that awareness is the crucial step.
Awareness is the crucial, yeah. And so what we do in terms of moving from our victim self to our creator self is we begin to tell the truth about how we feel, what we think, and how we perceive. That means finding safe people in our life who are going to accept our truth. If we tell it to somebody who isn't going to accept our truth, they are going to ridicule us, criticize us,
use it against us,
and use it against us.
Yeah.
And that budding tiny little true self that's trying to come out will be forced back into hiding again.
Right.
So we need to find people who are safe. This is a lot of what the 12 steps are about. People who are addicts, and again, I'm defining codependence as the greatest addiction, and there is a Codependence Anonymous group, so it is seen as an addiction. But people who go to groups, the rule in the group is you allow people to share from their authentic true self, and nobody says a word because they're not trained professionals and they don't know how to respond in a way that isn't going to be off-putting to the budding true self. So they give permission to the person to say anything they want to say without any feedback. And then when the group is over, people can come up to them one-on-one and talk about how they related to what they said, and then you feel as though people did hear you and they got something from what you said, which then bolsters your self-esteem. What I say matters, and people aren't coming up and giving me criticism or trying to embarrass me. That's the idea behind it.
Right.
The 12 steps are systematic spiritual progression where you learn how to work the spiritual steps so that you move from victim consciousness to creator consciousness by taking more and more responsibility for what you are creating and what you have created in your life.
This is such a, unique process of understanding, ourselves. People are, it's easier for them. We are so used to living with difficulties rather than take a pause, look at ourselves. Why am I so miserable all the time? Why am I not happy? Why am I, not feeling the joy that people talk about, or I hear about it, right? They don't pause to see, what's going on with me, that I'm not experiencing that joyfulness in life.
Yes, yes. And so I think this is really a good thing that you're bringing up, because that brings us to the issue: why am I feeling what I'm feeling? And so what we have is people who are projectors who blame other people and other events for their life. And then there are people who are capable of introspection, who turn the light back on yourself and then look at what's going on inside of them. And those are the people who can benefit from therapy. The people who are projectors, if they go into therapy, they generally don't stay, because the therapist is trying to help them look at themselves, and they're busy blaming everyone else, and they start to blame the therapist for not helping them.
Oh, I have those couple right here.
Oh, yeah.
So we talk to you more about this interesting topic right after our commercial break. Please join us back.
See you soon.
Welcome back from our commercial break. Dr. Mitra and Dr. Robert here at Heart-to-Heart program at KMET 1490 AM ABC News Radio Live. We're talking about codependency, false self and true self, and how to work with that. Our phone number here live is 951-922-3532. And Dr. Robert Jaffe to continue with this interesting topic, please.
Right. So where we left off before the break, we were talking about the move from victim consciousness to creator consciousness. And in order to do that, we have to grow emotionally from childhood into adulthood, and our wisdom has to keep increasing. So that that involves taking responsibility for everything that we create in our lives. And we create. I don't know if we create everything. We do co-create with other people, but we do have a big part in what we create in our lives. And people who the two types of people that we were talking about prior to the break were people who project outward, and these are blamers. These are people who say, it was her fault, it was his fault, if she hadn't said, if he hadn't done, and they will say that, or I was late because of the traffic, right? So it has to do with something outside their control. The traffic made me late. The person who takes responsibility says, when she said this, I felt this, but what I did with that was I responded this way. When he didn't do that, I felt this, but what I did with that is I responded this way. So there's reactions, and then there's responses. A reaction is an ego thing. So our ego, which is concerned with survival, is interested in an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, uh, and 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 so if somebody does something and I don't like what they do to me, I try to get even immediately. I'm a reactor. A responder is if someone does something to me and it hurts my feelings, I'm aware that they hurt my feelings. I may be aware that I'm angry, but I choose my response. I choose my response based on the circumstances and based on my wanting to be as loving as I can, even in the face of my own hurt and anger. People who are projectors are poor candidates for psychotherapy. That is not to say it's impossible for someone who projects to come into therapy and learn how to introspect and look at themselves, but it doesn't happen as often as we would like to see it happen. What we know is that people who project don't want to take responsibility,
Right.
and so to get somebody to take responsibility when they don't want to take responsibility is a big feat. We talk about free will, and so I do hypnosis, for example, and people will call me and they'll say, I need help to stop smoking. Will hypnosis work? And I will say, well, do you really want to stop smoking? Or how badly do you want to stop smoking? Well, yeah, that's why I'm calling you. I'm saying, okay, well, if you really want to stop smoking, hypnosis can definitely help you, as other methods can help you. I said, but if you secretly want to hold on to the smoking and you think hypnosis is just going to change your mind to want to stop smoking, it probably won't work.
Right.
Because no matter how good we get at psychology, we still don't have the power to change somebody's will. And each person has a will. So if the person comes into the session and they are intent on blaming other people or other things, and they're intent on not taking responsibility, no matter what we do, they won't take responsibility because they're not stupid people, and they see that we're trying to get them to take responsibility, and they just won't.
Exactly. So, like asking for hypnosis as a method of, taking care of their issues, such as smoking, it means that, they don't want to make an attempt or, do the effort to the actual effort to get to understand why, for example, they're smoking and, what they need to do to stop. But
Mm-hmm.
they think that a quick fix, they look at hypnosis as a quick fix.
Abracadabra,
Yeah.
you'll come in for a
Yeah.
session. Abracadabra, you will no longer smoke. Thank you very much. And now I no longer smoke.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right.
So,
I like the talk that you're having about, the blamers and not wanting to take responsibility, and then they blame the therapist.
they end up blaming the
Yeah.
therapist
Yeah.
because what they want for the therapist is to co-sign their projection.
Right.
They want the therapist to say, yes, it isn't your fault. And so if it's not their fault, then they feel free to be the way they've always been. They don't have to do anything to change themselves. And let's face it, making changes within ourselves takes effort.
Takes effort, takes willingness, takes responsibility, takes awareness and acceptance of the issue. I actually do have a couple like that. That the wife is the is a defensive mood.
Mm-hmm.
She always explains and goes the extra mile to explain that why she did or she didn't do something, and the husband is a first class blamer.
Yeah.
First class blamer. And then when I point out the blaming attitude and all of that, and he says I'm not hearing him, I'm not siding with him, and then I'm focusing on the wife, and then he really gets upset. He doesn't see his rage, he doesn't see his anger, he doesn't see his fear. He thinks he's perfect, he thinks he's the smartest. And then the wife in the opposite side, she goes on and explains and explains
Because
and
she has
explains
the
and explains.
opposite belief about herself.
Yeah.
She thinks that she's guilty of everything that
Of
he
everything.
says,
Yes.
and so she takes it in,
Yeah.
internalizes it, and hates that he's pointing it out.
Right.
Yeah.
So she was uncovering it.
Right.
Right.
So continuing with our discussion about codependency and our authentic true self. The first step, because we digressed in terms of seeing what is it that we need to do in order to heal. The first step is we need to be out of denial that we are codependent, or another way of saying it is fear-based, or another way of saying it is emotionally immature in certain ways. Emotionally immature doesn't mean that we're emotionally immature in all ways. We may be very good in certain ways and not so good in other ways. But the ways that we are not so good, we have to be open to recognizing. If, for example, we're not so good in terms of criticism, somebody criticizes us, we immediately get defensive. That's something that we can work on.
Right.
But so the first part in change is the recognition that there's something inside of me that I want to change, and I have the ability to change, and I know that I have the ability to change because I have the desire, and I'm going to work on it. Whatever I have the desire on and work on, it will start to move. I will start to move toward the achievement of. When I wanted to become a therapist, I had the desire, and that my first step was applying to get into school,
Right.
right? And then step by step, I had the desire, and I followed through, and I became.
Excuse me.
Bless you.
Thank you.
In the Jewish religion, we say you sneeze on the truth. So what I just said was the truth.
Was the truth,
Okay.
yes. And I definitely sneezed on it. Yes.
So we have to begin to notice our inauthentic, codependent, false self when it emerges. That's step one. Step two is we have to find safe people to be around. Maybe the safe person is somebody that you meet at an AA or a Codependence Anonymous meeting, and or you get as a sponsor somebody who helps you through this 12 steps. Maybe it's a close friend. Maybe it's a spouse. Maybe your spouse is a safe person and will be able to help you with that. Maybe it's a therapist. Maybe it's a coach. Somebody in your life that you feel like you don't have to put on airs and you can admit things to that would be hard for you to admit in other circumstances. So recognizing when you are operating from fear, and recognizing that you need to be around people who are emotionally safe, who aren't going to ridicule or criticize you for being your true self. Those are the two big first steps in healing yourself from
Right.
that.
Right.
Yeah. So observing my false self. I don't have to take action. All I got to do is see that I'm doing it. I hear myself saying something and I go, is that really true? I see myself overreacting to somebody criticizing me. And I go, oh, I'm really reacting strongly. Why? And the reason why is because I'm telling myself that that person is attacking me. It's interesting because we now believe that if somebody criticizes us, we are attacked. We're actually not being attacked. The person is simply stating something that they see about us that they don't like or that they don't agree with. That's not an attack. An attack is when somebody comes up and punches you in the face.
Well, yeah, I see that. At the same time, the way that comments are broadcasted, the attitude that's attached to it may feel as an attack.
People perceive it as an attack,
Right.
as though the other person has the power to hurt them,
Right.
rather than you're saying something and you're being mean about it, and I can say, you know what, you're saying something and you're being mean, and it doesn't apply to me because I'm not what you're saying.
Okay. Well,
Say,
that takes lots of self-confidence.
that takes self-confidence.
Right.
And takes maturity.
Right.
Right. And that's what I said about moving from victim consciousness to creator consciousness. We know in psychology that whatever we resist persists. So when someone says something to us and we fight back, we're actually giving it more power.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. This is a very interesting topic. It's not a simple topic, but it's a very interesting topic. We just got the notice that we only have another minute or so. So what we're going to say right now is we want everybody to be living a life of authentic love, gratitude, appreciation of yourselves and of those around you. And when we do that, we begin to make the biggest difference in the world that we can make, which is the transmutation from fear and hate into love.
Yes, and don't forget, see, all we need is each other, right?
All you need is each other, and
other's-
all you need is
It's love.
love.
So until next week at 3 p.m. for another episode about human sexuality, and at 4 about codependency, trauma, addictions, and relationships. Wish you a happy week ahead of you, and we see you back next week. All you need is love.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.